All right guys, this week we're gonna be making a bushcraft back quiver from tree bark. So let's go find some materials. Before we get started on this video, I just want to mention briefly some videos that are going to be coming up to YouTube very soon where I build this bow from a live green tree to finished bow in under 24 hours. And then in the next video, we're going to go ahead and fire harden this thing. Now the best way to make sure that you don't miss out on those videos is make sure that you're subscribed to the channel, click that little bell icon, and that's going to turn on notifications. Let's get started. In the springtime, when the sap's flowing, the bark will slip right off of these trees. So this one's pretty good here. It's got about the right diameter. You got a nice long, pretty straight piece without any branches. So we'll go ahead and cut this one. I'm gonna go ahead and just scrape off some of this real rough outer bark. You don't have to do this, but it'll look cleaner if you do. So then all you got to do is scribe around the top and bottom wherever you want to cut this thing off. Cut all the way through the cambium down to the wood. And with a small tree like this, it's not very thick, but some of the bigger ones, you really got to get down there. Now, I'm cutting this a little bit longer than I want my quiver because you're going to need some at the bottom to fold over and tuck up in there. So I'd say give yourself another at least 6 inches or so. I'm going to cut this a little longer. Once you've got that done, just run you a line right down the side as straight as you can. Then you can start peeling it off. Once you got it started, you can just do it with your fingers. Just try to support everything. Watch in here, make sure you're not sticking because you'll tear the bark. There you go. So you might look at this where I've girdled this tree and taken the bark off and think that I've killed this thing. And partially you would be right. This stem is going to die, but this stem is part of a much larger organism and it's all connected underground. All of these willows that you see behind me, they're probably all actually the same organism. And so it's basically like cutting the branch off of a tree. This stem's gonna die, but other shoots are gonna come up. All of the willows, the cottonwoods, aspen, all of that stuff will reproduce from suckers underground like that. So don't get worked up about taking the bark off of one of those species. Let's go make a quiver. You can even see right here and all of these little stobs, they look like punji sticks behind me. This is where the beavers have come in here and cut the willows off and eaten the bark off of them. And the beavers are actually why there's so many of these willow stems right here in this location, because they come in here, they cut them off, and then they just start shooting up sprouts or suckers all over the place, and you end up with this really thick reprod of willows that way. So most of this is pretty self-explanatory. We're gonna stitch up the side of this, but we need to close in the bottom. And the best way that I've found to do that is to make a couple of cuts in here so that this all folds in kind of like a cardboard box. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a couple of cuts in this, and it's gonna end up looking kind of like a step pyramid. Let me go ahead and cut this thing and then I'll show you what I'm talking about. Now on the back side, I just want to score. I don't want to go all the way through the bark. I just want to score the thicker bark on the outside so that it'll fold there like that. So that's going to close off the bottom. Now all we've got to do is punch some holes in here and start lacing this up. And I'll lace the bottom up before I lace the sides up, because you can't get in there. You know, if you try to lace the sides up first, you can't get in there to lace the bottom. But the easiest way that I've found to punch holes in this is with a leather punch. Now, of course, we could use the awl on our knife to punch holes, and I've done that. The problem with that is it works. You just got to be careful, because when you're working that awl through there, you'll split the bark, and once you split the bark, it just, you know, it weakens the integrity of the quiver or the basket or whatever you're making. So for this one, I'm going to go ahead and just use a leather punch. Now when I'm punching these holes up the side, I'm going to stay in. I'd say I'd leave at least a 1/4 inch between the edge of the bark and the hole. Otherwise, you're going to split the bark. I'm going to punch a hole about every inch or so. All right, so I've got some laces cut. I've got all of my holes punched all the way around. So I punched holes up this side, and then all of the holes match holes on the other side so that we can lace them up evenly. And then you can see how I've got this stepped cut going on here. So I've taken this cut and I've gone all the way in till I left about 25% of the width not cut right here in the middle, and then I've just went ahead and scored across the back so it'll fold, not all the way through, just scoring the outside. And then again, about that same distance, I've come up, stepped in, scored this again so that this part folds and this whole thing folds together just like that, and then the outside wraps around, and then everything is going to get stitched up just like so. Now, of course, if you want a bigger quiver, just cut a bigger tree, cut the bark from a bigger tree, make your notches bigger, all your cuts are going to be bigger, but the same principle is going to apply. That same design is going to apply no matter how big the tree is. And when you're pulling these laces through, be careful, and also be careful that your laces aren't too fat, otherwise you will split the bark. You need to kind of support things as you pull it through there. All right, so I've got this all laced up and I haven't got things tight yet. Before I tighten things up, you might want to go ahead and just take a wad of grass and stick down in the bottom, because these end pieces are going to want to curl in, and the grass will dry in there and it'll help keep everything spread out. But it's also going to help keep your arrows from rattling around. You know, if you just stick your arrows in here and the tips are down there rattling around, it's going to cause noise. So a little bit of grass in the bottom going to give your tips a place to stick down into and make things a lot less noisy. All right, so the main part of the quiver is done. Now we just need to reinforce the top and put a shoulder strap on there. All right, so the main body of our quiver is done. I've got the top laced up, I've got it reinforced. And when this dries, it's gonna be pretty solid. It's not gonna be flexible like this. So I'm gonna go ahead and just put a shoulder strap on there. Now I've got some more bark. This is actually the inner bark of an elm tree, which is very strong. And it remains somewhat flexible once it dries out. You can work it so it stays flexible, kind of like you can with deer hide. There we go. Perfect. I really like the way that this quiver turned out. It's very unique, it works well, and it really didn't take that long to make, and it didn't cost anything. So I've also got this bow here. Now you're gonna see this in some upcoming videos where I actually take a live tree and build this bow within 24 hours. So we take a live tree, 24 hours later we have a bow that's shooting, and then the very next video we take that bow one step farther and fire harden the belly of this bow, and you can see that the belly is all charred, and so we put some heat to this thing. And so if you want to see those videos, make sure you subscribe, hit that little bell icon to turn on notifications. We'll see you guys next time.